Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 29 of 2026. I'm your host, Kiev. You can follow me on X at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by FanDuel Sports, a proud partner with March Madness and the NCAA tournament. If you like to support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, become a member, pick any. For winning cappers, get the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. If nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers, become a free picks and Telegram subscriber. The madness rolls on, my friends, and we have a wonderful guest. Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk is back to break down the Sweet 16. Marco is a fantastic and extremely experienced handicapper. He knows what he is doing. I can't wait to talk to Marco about these big games and get into some of these delicious spreads and totals to break down for your betting pleasure. Before Marco comes on, I want to remind you guys that we have our Survivor out here, and it is a Sweet 16 reboot, meaning you can still cash in the thousands of dollars. Just check out the oddsbreakers.com, click on the link to Splash Sports, and you can get in our contest, and it keeps growing and growing. I think we're going to get a huge push of people coming in on Thursday morning and Wednesday night. Over 180 people are currently in it as of right now. Also, want to remind you that our schedule will be changing soon. We're going to have a Final Four next week, which is awesome. Next week, I'm going to work on our NFL Pythagorean win total, and I'm going to get all that information out within the next few weeks, have a podcast about it, get my season win totals bets started. We do know the teams that these NFL teams are playing, but we do not know the order. But does that always mean something? Sometimes the rest, but most of the time it all evens out. I like to fire on some bad numbers as soon as I get my data put together. We're also going to focus a little bit more on big events, horse racing coming up. You got the Triple Crown. You got a little bit of Major League Baseball, but that's mostly from a futures perspective. I don't do daily baseball as far as podcasting, but I do sell a summer baseball package for only $200 going all the way to September 1st. And do I go into football season? No, I want to focus on football season, and that's why it's only $200. But I love betting baseball in the summer, and I think I find some good angles and some good plays to be made. Just going into some of the advanced metrics, what I do every single morning for all of the sports that I really bet on. UFC, always going on. If you want to be a UFC, there's no package for UFC. You just have to be a monthly subscriber at the Odds Breakers. Click on Premium Plays and Info to get that done. Our agenda for the next few weeks is going to be mostly podcasts on Wednesday. I will probably do a recap on the Final Four on Monday. Could be recorded Sunday night. And for the Final Four, I should say, a Sweet 16 recap. And after that's all said and done, Wednesday's recording for Thursday morning will be our summer schedule. If you haven't yet, please like our channel on YouTube. Usually going to be recording on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. All right. Without further ado, let's get into some March Madness. We're going to talk all the games with Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk. Want to be a professional handicapper? Check out theoddsbreakers.com, where we now have live odds and pick tracking. Click on live odds pick tracking, and you can start tracking your picks, partnering with TallySight. Once you develop records and a following, you can use that information to move to the next level, gaining all that experience in your sports betting career. Make sure you check out live odds and pick tracking at theoddsbreakers.com, partnering with TallySight. Now I'm very excited to welcome back one of our longtime favorite guests, and Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com. You can follow Marco on X at Marco in Vegas. My man, Marco, it's been one hell of a college basketball season. It's spring, more like summer out west. How are you doing today?
Yeah, record highs here for the month of March in Vegas. I can only imagine what you guys are experiencing next door to us in Arizona. But hey, this is the time of the year we like, and the sad part of March Madness, coming to an end. It's a long haul from August in football straight through college basketball. But you know what that means for me? We got playoff time for NBA and NHL, and WNBA will be starting up in May. And for me, summertime, you know what that means? Triple Crown time.
Oh,
we got all the prep races. We got a couple big ones this week, in fact, Kiev, that's going to determine a lot of things. And hey, you didn't have it on the list, but I'll throw one out for you. I'll give you a quickie. There's a big race on Saturday, the Florida Derby. There's 3 horses in that race. I have bet one of them in the futures market. The line price is coming down. I've had a little bit to do with that at Westgate. But the horse I'm going to tell you, you can still get him at 10-1 if he wins on Saturday, which I think he runs 1-2 on Saturday. If he wins, he will be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. And that's Chief Wallaby. Write it down.
Chief Wallaby. Who's the trainer?
Bill Mott.
Bill Mott. All right. Is it okay? I just wrote it down. There you go. Funny. This is the exact same time I start looking at the ponies, and Chris and I will be knocking on your door for some Derby action, my friend, as always. And I can't. It's a nice switch. I love it. I don't Jones for football really until July, so I think we're going to be good for a while. We got baseball, lots of great distractions, and holy cow, have you killed it in the WNBA? I mean, that is like a moneymaker for you over at Wager Talk. Well, college basketball is still here, and Thirsty Thursday's coming up, my friend. But before we get into those games, I have to ask you if Drizella and Anastasia actually killed Cinderella this year, the wicked, ugly stepsisters. And I'm not sure if Disney's allowed to say ugly anymore, but we sure as hell can, because there is some ugliness to the fact that you can't seem to get a decent underdog type, low grade, mid-major school, into this Sweet 16.
And we're going to blame Anastasia, the NIL sister, okay? That's where we're going to put all the blame, and we're never going to see that again. I honestly don't think you're going to see those Cinderella runs. And the reason for that, Kiev, back in the day, what you ended up having when you would get one of those mid-majors that would make the run is it was a school that had a collection of kids, students, that were just a notch below. But when you put that group together for 2 or 3 years, which that's what those kids did because they were a notch below, they stayed in school and they played at those mid-majors, and they were a good unit. There wasn't that superstar player, but there was that good team. Well, now what has happened, anybody that ends up being anything decent, better than expected, that went to one of those smaller schools, they're not there the following year, okay? They're being poached. And perfect example is look at the game on Sunday, Iowa at Florida. Now, Iowa pulls the big upset. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But the kid on there, the kid that threw the punch, what's his name, Bulgaris or something, he played at Robert Morris last year. Okay. Now, for those that don't know, Robert Morris, tiny school in Pittsburgh, just outside of Pittsburgh, that plays in the Horizon League. He had a breakout season last year for Robert Morris. They made, that improbable run, to make, win their conference and stuff and get to the dance. And then, boom, they get poached. And that's what's going to happen happen. Money is going to dictate it. And I hate to use the cliche, but it is the one. The rich will continue to get richer in the new format of college basketball and football, both.
Well, I definitely agree. Anastasia is a massive part of it, and we'll call her NIL, and we'll call Drizella CBS. I really thought that they did not want Santa Clara in a standalone game on CBS before the rest of the game started against Texas. They wanted Kentucky there, and I think there's been multiple examples of this, not only in this sport but in other sports as well. I mean, I wish High Point didn't get in foul trouble against Arkansas, because that was our closest Cinderella this year, and they smoked my Badgers, and that was part the Badgers choking, and part they're just wanted it more. And I honestly thought the calls were going the Badgers' way, and I'm a Badger fan, but I'm just going to admit that I really thought that they were being a little favored, and High Point overcame it. So I think there's blame around, but yes, I think Cinderella is dead partially because the networks want it that way, and more because of the Anastasia NIL part that's really killing these little programs. I can guarantee you some from High Point is going to be scooped up this year. There may be two guys, their center and that 3-point shooter. They're going to go to Iowa State or like maybe even a Michigan State or something like that. I can definitely see that happening, and that's a shame, because if these guys have another year of eligibility, High Point would have been spending that much better next year, Marco. So really, really tough to see some of that stuff. What about surprises? What are you surprised about the tournament? Now, if we had a Cinderella, we would be saying that we're surprised. What are some of the surprises that from the outcomes that happened over the weekend?
Well, obviously, the biggest surprise of the tournament was the High Point win over Wisconsin. I mean, that's, if you want to take it on pure, upset value, that was it. But for me, I'm going to go to Sunday, and I'm going to go to Iowa beating Florida because, and I was one of them. Okay, I'm going to tell you, my bracket is doing fantastic so far, except I can't win any of my brackets that I've entered my contest in because I've had one misstep, and that was Florida that I had winning it all.
You and a lot of people. You and a lot of people.
The last 6 weeks of the season, nobody was playing as good as Florida. Let's be honest about it. I mean, they were rolling, and I thought the experience of doing it last year, and we know how hard it is to repeat. I know Connecticut did it a couple of years ago. But in today's landscape, it is hard to repeat as a national champion. But they got better as the season went on. And that's something else that you're going to see a change in the landscape, because you don't have teams being held intact for 2 or 3 years, okay? We've seen that started to, the last 10 years, we joke about the one and dones. But the big programs, it's always been that way. But now think about it, Kiev, whenever you buy a team, and it's like me going to a horse auction, okay? I'm building my stable, and it's how much money I want to spend. But when you're doing this on a basketball team, think about it. We see it in the NBA all the time. When a team creates the so-called dream teams and they put together 2 or 3 superstars on one team, that doesn't click immediately because everybody's got to learn what their role is on that team. And that's what we're seeing in college basketball. A lot of these teams did not play their best basketball in November and December because it was, maybe 4 of the 5 were brand new. You had a couple, 5-star recruits that now, am I the alpha dog? Are you the alpha dog? How are we going to distribute this around? And they take time for that chemistry to build and that team to gel. And that's exactly what you saw with Florida. They were not a good team in November and December. As the season progressed, every week that went by, they got stronger. And I really thought they were going to be the toughest out. And I had them going all the way. My other 3 teams, for my Final Four are still alive. So, I'll have fun rooting for everybody else, but I did have 2 teams that weren't popular choices in my Final Four They're good teams, but they were on that next line, so to speak.
Absolutely. And, it's just a lot of surprises for Texas, too. So I agree with you. Nailed the first two. I 100% agree. I think maybe blowing out Prairie View A&M 115-50 or whatever it was, that probably wasn't a good look, Florida. You kind of deserved that. Now, of course, my bracket, my main one, I had Arizona beating Florida. I at least have St. John's on the top edge of it. So if that changes things, maybe that helps. But, I'll be a Johnny's fan coming this weekend. I don't know. I think Texas, how they just look just bad against NC State, because I was one of those guys that said neither team deserved to be in. And then I'm like, oh, God, that looks gross. And then all of a sudden they beat BYU and Gonzaga. And I guess we were probably, I guess in all of our minds, we're just trained to think Gonzaga is better than they actually are coming in this tournament. I think it's a big disservice to them playing all those cupcakes all year while, Arkansas is fighting with Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky's and, all the big SEC teams and the Big Ten's fighting. It's like, I think it's almost better for them that they're playing the better competition coming in. We keep forgetting that, and here I am picking St. Mary's in a Survivor, and they're getting blown out. So I have to remember that a little bit more. I don't know why I forgot it again. But yeah, Texas to me was a very big surprise the way they made the Sweet 16 with 3 games. But anyways, let's talk about.
I'll be honest with you. Texas was a good play for me. That was one of my that was a 5% play for me against BYU. And the reason for it seems like almost every year, Kiev, that team that's oh, you didn't deserve to be here. And I agree with you. That was the narrative on them with the play-in game against NC State. I thought Oklahoma deserved to be in front of Texas. If you're asking me, who should have been in that play-in game, but the fact that they won the play-in game, the fact that they won it in a tight fashion, most people do look at that and say, okay, here's a team that didn't belong. They were lucky to even advance, and now they got to jump on a plane and go to Portland and play with just one day in between. It's such a negative. See, I look at it the other way. You already got a tournament game under your belt. You got the butterflies out, if there are any. And BYU, once they suffered the injury, and I'm blanking on the player's name on top of my head there, they weren't the same team down there. Yeah, they weren't the same team down the stretch. And I thought that, Texas would be able to go in there and win the game. And to be honest with you, it shouldn't even have been as close as the final score, because the big white kid in the middle, the center for Texas, couldn't hit a foul shot to save his life. I was joking with the guys that I was in the bar with watching the game on Friday. I said he's the white version of Shaq, because all they did is foul him down the last 2 minutes of the game. He was 0 for 7 from the line in the second half in that game, and that's the only thing that kept BYU having a chance. If they could have hit a couple shots down the stretch. But that's an angle I like to use off of those play-in games, is to pick one of those teams. And I didn't do it with Miami of Ohio, because Miami, Ohio had their statement game by winning the play-in game, because everybody's just trashed them all year about their undefeated season and how soft the schedule was. Well, they proved everybody wrong in the play-in game. But then reality, you want to talk about, use the Cinderella reference. The clock struck midnight at about 11:30 p.m. It hit early. They were out of that game early against Tennessee.
Absolutely, certainly were. And that Matas guy, I know you want to pronounce his last name again. I tried throughout the year. He went 3 for 11 from free throw line. He makes Shaq look good, actually, shooting free throws. Perfect segue to get into Texas versus Purdue. Purdue minus 7 now. I'm going to call it a 7. It's creeping up there. The total's 148.5. Anything on this one?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Purdue's one of those teams I have in the Final Four. In fact, I had Purdue going all the way to the championship game against Florida, and eventually losing to Florida. So who do I like in this one? Yeah, I do like Purdue. I think this is where now that second week catches up to Texas. And Purdue's one of those teams, Kiev, people don't like them, okay, because they're not flashy, all right? I look at them, they're like, I call them the blue-collar team. They're going to, get their lunch pail. They're going to come to work, and they're going to do it methodically. They're going to bore you. They're not going to run up and down the floor. but their bigs are going to dominate you. And, when they're not doing stupid stuff, this is a very good team. We've seen some lapses from them during the course of the season, and a couple times, they failed in big game situations. But when they bring their A game, they're as good as anybody in the country. And we're seeing that so far. What they did in the Big Ten tournament, they've carried that over into the big dance, and I'm going to ride them until they're not there anymore.
I'm with you. The first play I gave out last night, Purdue minus 6.5. So I explained it just like you did. The line's short because of how good Texas looked, but Texas is going to regress. It's time for them to regress. Purdue's got the guard play to win in this tournament, and I completely agree. I would lay up to 8 probably. I think it could get to 8. So if you like Purdue, I want to get it right away. Bobby Newport, thanks for stopping by, my man. You don't even have to say Nick's brother anymore. Thanks for always hanging out here at the Odds Breakers with us. Really appreciate it, my man. Really, really good guy over there. Iowa versus Nebraska. So Iowa versus Nebraska. Nebraska's laying minus 1.5 now. The total is 133.5. Marco, this kind of went up a little bit, then kind of creep back down. This is a fun Big Ten game, and I bet you these guys are both looking at each other like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And here we are.
Yeah, Nebraska is a team that I've been high on them all year, I'll be honest with you. And they had that tremendous start to the season. Then when they had a couple key games against the big boys, they didn't get the win, okay? So the luster fell off of them. These two played during the regular season twice. They split on home floors. Iowa wins at home by 5, and then Nebraska won the season finale by 9 or 10, I believe. But that actually was an overtime game, Kiev. And I will point out one thing. It was a horrible spot for Iowa in that game, because that was the game immediately following playing Michigan at home in your home finale, where they took Michigan to the limit and only lost, I think, by 3. And I'm one of those guys that, when you lose a big game like that, you can lose the same game twice. So I was on Nebraska in that game, and I got the cover. I was lucky to get the cover because, as we like to joke, overtime is where underdogs go to die, and that's what ended up happening to Iowa in that one. So I think based on what people are going to look at those first two meetings, then they're going to look at what Iowa just did to Florida. And I told you, like myself and so many of us pundits that did like Florida, they're going to put the stock a little bit too high, I think, on Iowa. Don't sleep on this Nebraska team. I haven't got to the window on this game yet, because this is probably one of the toughest games of the Sweet 16 round, but I do lean to Nebraska in this one.
I like Nebraska, and I bet them at the money line, though. I don't want to lay points in this one. This is a team where both of them are going to have near proximity advantages, yet Iowa just cannot guard the 3 as well. It's funny, they play super slow, but their adjusted field goal percent on defense is not anywhere near Nebraska's, as Nebraska's going to have a 3-point advantage here. I was on the under in both of those games, and I watched both of them, and it really sucked that it went over the second game, but I actually went over before overtime. I think Nebraska is the better team. When I saw Iowa beat Florida, if there was another 5 minutes in that game, Florida wins by 5-6 points. But good for Iowa. They fought their butts off, but it's also kind of putting them in a little bit of a weird spot with a coach that's only coached 2 years in basketball, and Ben McCollum that coached at Drake and now coaches at Iowa, when Fred Hoiberg has been there for a long time. He's been to Sweet 16s before. He hasn't gotten past one, but neither has Ben McCollum. I think Nebraska wins. I would caution laying points, though. If it gets 2.5, I certainly would not lay points, and I'll take the money line here with Nebraska. Arkansas versus Arizona. I wrote down 8.5, but this is back down to now 166.5. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and I think Arkansas is going to be a popular dog in this. When you look at an Arkansas team that goes up and down the floor, and they can score. And what they scored 97 and 94, in the tournament so far. So this is a team that, as fast as they can score, they give points up as fast, and that's a problem. Arizona plays great defense, and Arizona is going to have a field day, I think, against this Arkansas defense. And it's one thing, when you're playing in transition and you're chucking up threes when you're playing with the lead. If you're trailing and you're down 5 or 7 points, and now you got to hit key threes, all of a sudden that bucket becomes a little smaller for Arkansas, and things tighten up. And this is where I could see this game being that, 5 to 7 point range till you get inside the final 3 minutes, where you got to start making some threes to cut into that deficit. And that's where I see Arizona going to the line and extending the lead. And, the one thing negative that I will say about Arizona is, if you dissect the box score from the last game, it looks like they had a 12-point win over Utah State. Utah State is a team that I thought was vastly underrated, because everybody knew the history coming into the tournament of the Mountain West Conference, Kiev, of how the teams just absolutely sucked when they got to the big dance. But this Utah State team was good defensively, can slow the pace down, and they frustrated Arizona. If Arizona didn't have that monster edge at the foul line, that could have been a different outcome on. I think what they play Saturday, or got my days mixed up, but that was a closer game than a 12-point final would indicate.
It was,
but I think this matchup is going to be, if you play at a faster pace like Arkansas wants to do, what's that do? That creates more possessions per game. And if you've got an edge on both sides of the court, as Arizona does, the more possessions you have, that's the it works in your favor, because it's more opportunities for successes. And I think that's where Arkansas will finally, bow out of this. Is it'll end up being like, a 12 to 14 point game at the end.
I had Arizona minus 11.5, and I could not freaking believe I covered that game. It was just like, are you serious? I mean, the way that it happened at the end. But at the same time, I had Miami plus 7.5, and you know what happened against Purdue at the end of that game.
Yeah.
It was, you take your good with the bad, I guess. I had first half, too, that barely got by for Zona. Zona let them have some layups. I thought Utah State was shooting threes out of their mind. Utah State was my best bet against Villanova, and then I went to Arizona, of course, but I was lucky to get by. Arizona's got some chinks in the armor. I still think they're the most complete team in the tournament, and I'm scared to go against Arizona, but I'm also scared of Darius Acuff from Arkansas, who just seems to win games when the going gets tough. He just kind of takes over, and sometimes he's impossible to stop. A lot of people like the over. I think that Arizona's defense is being a little disrespected here. Arizona can run with teams, so if Arkansas is going to run, they're going to run. I don't have a play in this anymore. I'm going to pass on this one and enjoy it watching. Illinois versus Houston. Houston. I'm going to call this 3, Marco. I see 2.5s at our friends at FanDuel. Threes, one straggler, 3.5. The total's 139.5. Pretty low total here. Houston somehow got seated in a place where they could play at home. Imagine that. How nice. There you go, Calvin Sampson. What's your excuse today? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Houston all year, and for most of the year they rolled. They had that little stretch at the end of the season where they, it seemed like they were having a good game, a blowout, and then they have a struggle. They had a stretch, though, if you look at the end of the season, there was that 3-game stretch where they played 3 games in 8 days, and they went through a gauntlet. Okay, they played 2 big Monday games. They started it at Iowa State. If you remember, that game was a war. They led most of that game, and Iowa State came back at the end and stole the game. Then they had to turn around and play Arizona, and then they went back out on the road for another big Monday game at Kansas. So that kind of took some of the luster off their season, that 3-game stretch right there. But other than that, they've been good. I looked at this game back and forth. This is a game that I thought I was going to start out and have Houston. The more I'm looking at this game, I'm swinging the pendulum to the other side. I'm looking at Illinois in this game. They're a team like Purdue that I kind of got lost in the shuffle with the Big Ten. When they're good, they're one of the best teams in the country. Then you blow a 26-point lead to UCLA on the road. Explain, that game, how that happened. And what made that game even more mind-boggling with Illinois is, if you remember, UCLA was returning home after the game that Cronin basically ejected his own player. And I thought he really was going to lose the UCL team the rest of the way. I thought the players were going to quit on him, and they looked like it when they were down 26 in that game.
Sure.
But they found a way to come back and win that game, whether it was their comeback or Illinois' choke job. But then that was what catapulted UCLA on their run the rest of the way. But I will go on record as saying this: the winner of this Illinois-Houston game will be in the Final Four.
That's tough, man. And Nebraska and Iowa is going to be really upset with you for that crazy prediction you got there, Marco. Absolutely. There is a few straggler brackets. I do have Illinois in, so I'll be rooting for them a little bit. And this spread came down. It was back. It was up at 3.5, and it's kind of down now. It's funny, you got the number 2 offense against the number 4 defense, and they're at home, and you wonder how the whistles are going to be at the end. I want 3.5 if you're going to make a play on Illinois here. Illinois is the better rebounding team, and they are the taller team. They're actually the tallest team aggregated on KenPom this year, and Duke is second. So they're going to have some rebounding advantages, ranking 47th in rebounding percentage to Houston at 43rd, but also Illinois 33rd in effective field goal percent, while Houston's 144th. And that's Houston's crutch. They can get really cold sometimes, and I think that keeps the Illinois in the game. I've seen Illinois go on the road and choke a little bit, and I was like, wow, Illinois hasn't had too many big wins, but neither does Houston. Every time Houston stepped up to a top 10 team, Arizona twice, Iowa State once, they lost every single game. So, this should be a nail-biter of a game, and I definitely have see, I can't really say 3.5 now because there's not enough of them, but I would say wait for 3.5 and grab Illinois when you have a chance.
I think when the public, Kiev, because you mentioned that, playing in Houston, the public's not betting these games until the day of the game. And you will see the public, I think, come in on Houston because of that perceived home court advantage. And the other thing that you got to worry about with Houston, and it's always a problem with them, is if they get in foul trouble. And if I'm Illinois, my game plan early is I'm going to utilize those bigs that they have and pound the ball inside where you've got advantages, or you're going to get them in foul trouble. And then if you do get them in foul trouble, even if you don't get them to, guys fouling out, it changes how they have to play defense against you. That's where I would work if I'm Illinois. That's my game plan.
I'll tell you this, if I can cap the refs in college basketball, I'd be a pretty rich man, my friend. So we don't know which way they're going to go. Sometimes they're swallowing the whole time, and you're like, the under's looking good. Sometimes they're just every single movement, the guy looks at you wrong, and then there's a foul, and the over's looking good. And that's a little tell if you're live betting. Just look at what the refs are doing here, because you have to really stop playing defense when teams get into foul trouble there. Yeah, I do agree, Bobby. Houston's defense isn't as good as before. And that's kind of what I was looking at as well in this situation, especially from a rebounding perspective. And if you want to talk about the public influencing a line, St. John's versus Duke minus 6.5, total 442.5. Do you think this line moves? What do you think about this game?
This is a tough game because you've got, you either love Duke or you hate Duke. And because, Duke didn't dominate through, the ACC tournament, although they won it, they, were just getting by. And everybody said, the injuries have caught up to Duke. They're not the same team. They don't have the depth that they had before. And so the luster fell off the bloom, so to speak, with Duke. And then you had the first game against Siena, okay? And then everybody was lining up to go against them. And what happens? Duke absolutely blows the doors off of TCU. Now you got St. John's coming in. You got Rick Pitino. You got the darling St. John's. I think come game day, you will see money on St. John's. I think this is the one favorite that the public will want to go against. Right now, for me, I've got a lean to Duke. Haven't got to the window on this game because I do think the line will come down So I'm going to wait and see where if it does bottom out, where it bottoms out at, and you just try to get some value there. And that's not something you usually hear me say. Wait to bet Duke, because usually when the public gets involved, that's a public team. But I don't think the public is convinced that they're as good as they were a month ago.
Yeah, okay. So you don't know if the line's going to go up. I still think we get 7.5. And I'll admit, Marco, with no problem, no hesitation whatsoever, I hate Duke. I hate Duke. But I will bet on Duke at times, and I'm scared of Duke. I'm scared to go against Duke, and there's a lot of reasons for it. I believe Caleb Foster's going to be back. You saw Patrick Njongba come back last game. He played a few minutes, and now they're going to have the inside size to face St. John's. If you saw that St. John's Kansas game, was one of my largest plays was the under. I was really scared of overtime when that got completely ugly at the end of the game. The networks love that one, didn't they? But a situation where they're not going to be able to rebound like they did against Kansas, against Duke, and that scares me a bit. But I will say that their full court press defense should be able to mess Duke up a little bit. And I think maybe a look on St. John's in the first half. You'd have to have at least 3.5 to make that play. I'm wondering if it gets to 7.5 and maybe we can find a soft 3 or a hard 3.5, I should say, or a 4. It would be nice for a first half play here. And that's kind of where I think it happens. But Duke at the end of the game, it wouldn't be shocking to see, what you saw with Arizona versus TCU, where Arizona's up 4 points with like 3 minutes left, and then they win by 12. And you saw that with Purdue as well against Miami. It's just a better team, not better coach team necessarily, but just a better shooting team with the College Player of the Year. And I will say that Cameron Boozer is a hell of a lot better than his dad. So I will lean St. John's first half. Alabama versus Michigan plus 10.5 is what Alabama has, minus 10.5 for Michigan. Total 174.5. This is the biggest spread of the tournament. Did what we see with Bama, was that real against Texas Tech, Marco?
I'll tell you what, I didn't believe it. Full disclosure, I was on Texas Tech.
So was I. One of my bigger losses. I won the day, but it would have been a huge day if I won that, and it was just a okay day,
It was. I totally read that one wrong. I'll admit it. And but this Alabama team, and the reason I don't like them, and they remind me a lot of the Arkansas team, and that's something we saw with a lot of the SEC teams. They can go up and down the floor, they can score, but man, when it comes time to play some defense, I don't like it. And Michigan is a team. We talk about it coming in. At the beginning of the tournament, everybody, talks, what's the criteria to winning, a national championship in college basketball? Well, you've got to be both offensive and defensive efficiency. You got to be, in that like top 20 scenario. Well, Michigan checks both of those boxes. Okay. Alabama doesn't. And this is another one where I think it's going to be a faster paced game. But when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, Michigan is light years ahead of Alabama, and Alabama's just had it too easy for 2 games. And I think people are going to look at all the points they put up so far in the tournament, and they're going to look at them and see them get 9.5 or 10 points, in this contest, and they're going to want to bet the dog. This is going to be another popular dog, in my opinion. In Michigan, down the stretch, did not cover. This is a team that's won 8 of their last 9 games since they played Duke. But they only went 2-7, Kiev, during that period. And it was almost, to me, it was like we had such a buildup to that Duke-Michigan matchup, which, again, it's crazy to get a non-conference matchup like that in late February like we did. But I think there was such a buildup to it that Michigan went into a funk after it. It was like, okay, the rest of this is meaningless till we get to the tournament. Just they did enough to get by, in my opinion, and I think it hurt their stock. I still think Michigan's a very good team. I think they roll here, and that's probably going to be a very unpopular selection, but I like them, and I'm laying it with Michigan.
And it's crazy what Alabama did without Aiden Holiday with the pot charges. I'm confused by Alabama's performances here, and I will say they were unconscious. Now, the question is, do you think that Michigan's coach, Dusty May, is a great coach? I think he is, and I think he's not going to make some stupid mistakes like he did against Wisconsin. Alabama is similar to Wisconsin, fast-paced, but even faster, shooting tons of threes, rebounding it and cleaning up, playing some defense. And Texas Tech looked scared that game. They were like airballing for a while. They were just completely shell-shocked. But Michigan's not going to be shell-shocked. And I honestly seen Michigan, especially during the Duke game, start dribbling the ball out with like 7 minutes left. They really slow it down at the end of the games. I think that Michigan's got to keep them in the half court, and they're going to be smart enough to do that. And they could really beat up Alabama here. At the same time, I think Alabama's got some hidden motivation that I've never seen. Alabama, I've never seen a team play as fast as them and only in ranked 10th in turnovers. It's pretty amazing. But not turning the ball over also leads to unders, and you kind of see the direction I'm going here. I just see a lot more ways this under hits. The under can hit by Michigan playing correctly, even if Alabama covers. The under can hit with Michigan with a blowout here. It's not like I'm taking a pick'em type game, which I'm a little bit worried about overtime. LJ Kaysen, I know, was missing for Michigan, but they are so deep that they can turn it on without him. And you have to understand that Alabama's got Aiden Holloway. I don't think Alabama can go back-to-back and shoot the way that they did. I like the under 174.5, Marco, and that's the direction I'm going with this game.
I can't argue with that. No question. I think that's a correlated parlay for the way I'm looking at the game, because I think the difference in the game will be the Michigan defense. And if that is the case, they got to put Alabama in check somewhat.
Michigan State versus UConn. UConn minus 1.5, total 136.5. I don't know who's referring these two red faces, I should say. But that's going to be a fun game to watch. You got the old coach and Tom Izzo there, and you got Dan Hurley. It's going to be a fun matchup with a hell of a low total.
Yeah, I mean, we go from something that's going to be a track meet on paper to first one to 60 maybe, in this one. I mean, you want to talk about, going to be deliberate styles in, good defense. That's going to be Michigan State and Connecticut and Michigan State. I referenced Purdue calling them the blue-collar team. My God, that's Michigan State. I mean, they're going to pack their lunch and go to work. And they're not going to beat themselves. When it comes to tournament time and Coach Izzo, there's not a coach, and he's done it his entire career. He is not scared to schedule tough games in November and December. And that's why he's always such a tough out in the month of March. I lean to Michigan State in this one. I haven't got to the window yet. I'll be totally honest with you. It's, this Connecticut team at times looks like a team that can win another national championship. And then they have games like, the last one when they faced St. John's, and just got the snot beat out of them. But just, what was it? Week or two prior to that, they beat the snot out of St. John's. So it's just crazy. And we could get another St. John's Connecticut matchup if both teams get wins on in the Sweet 16 round. How fun would that be to see those two hook up again?
Absolutely. And Bobby's like, can Michigan State hit jumpers is his question. That's a great question, Bobby, because this is the whole handicap that I have and liking UConn in this game. There's some good points. The second weekend shooting isn't as good as first weekend shooting. Unders tend to hit in the Sweet 16, and it becomes a lot more serious. On paper, you can see that both of these teams kind of match up really well against each other. Michigan State, a little bit overrated on defense, ranking 52nd in opponent effective field goal percent. UConn can't hit threes like they have in the past, 135th on KenPom. But what I like about the Huskies is their shot selection. They have a rim and three rate a lot higher than Michigan State. Michigan State's rim and three rate's 344th. I don't like teams like that. And I feel like Michigan State doesn't have They don't control the game. They seem to go with the pace of the other team is what I'm trying to say. They don't have an identity when it comes to that. And I think that gives the other team an advantage when that happens. Dan Hurley's the younger guy. I think both coaches are great and Hall of Famers, but Dan Hurley has got the more energy. I think he's going to bring that to this UConn team. I took the money line, of course. I took it at open when it was a much better number. But, I'd still say money line minus 125, minus 130 is where I like the Huskies here, Marco.
Like I said, this is one I haven't got to the window yet, but I can make a case for both sides in this one for sure.
Tennessee, Iowa State. Iowa State minus 4.5-ish, total 138.5. Whew, man. They sure came back against Kentucky, but at the same time, now they're facing another SEC team that's been pretty hungry. Rick Barnes is the coach. What are your thoughts on this beast?
Well, other than Rick Barnes being the coach, I think Tennessee has a big shot here. I have been riding Iowa State. They were I don't know that you can actually call them a sleeper, but they were, down on the list. When everybody was talking, rewind to like the last 2 weeks of the regular season. Everybody was in complete agreement on the first three number one seeds. But there was that debate of who was going to get the fourth one. Was it going to be Florida? Was it going to be Connecticut? Was it going to be Houston? Those were the three teams that everybody kind of was jockeying in and out of the fourth spot. Well, then obviously the way Florida finished out the season, they took control, in Connecticut fell to the next line. Houston was the next line. Nobody ever really put Iowa State into that conversation of stealing one of the, the number one seeds. And I think they've gone, under the radar a little bit because, they're in the conference, with bigger names, obviously Arizona dominating, the Big 12 and such. And then you have the blue blood of Kansas there. But this Iowa State team, when they bring their A game, which we've seen, several times this year, they can beat anybody. But right now, our job as handicappers is to find value. And I think right now the stock is at its highest point with Iowa State. And I think it might have just gone a little bit too high. I think this is going to be a tight game. I see it as a 1 to 3 point game with either side winning it. And so if I think it's that much of a coin flip and I can get 4.5, I got to look at the dog in Tennessee.
All right. Look at the dog in Tennessee. Iowa State against Kentucky was one of my best bets. It started out rocky, but I just kind of saw and people don't know this, but when there's an injury that happens to a team, that's actually a bet on spot for the next time because everybody rallies and then later you fade them. So what's going to happen here and what I'm hoping for, Marco, is I think Joshua Jefferson's going to play for Iowa State, but he's still going to be hurt. He's going to want to play in the Sweet 16, but he's going to play 8 minutes. It's just going to be like, Jefferson's back, and then line, it might even get even better for you. That's what I'm kind of looking at. But even with Joshua Jefferson, this line is too big, and I hate to say it, and I hate betting on Rick Barnes. But if you look at the past 2 years, Rick Barnes was in 2 Elite Eights the last 2 years and the Sweet 16 the year before. So that whole mantra on Rick Barnes being a terrible guy in the NCAA tournament is kind of fading a little bit. And maybe him as a big favorite's fading, but now he's kind of a little bit under the radar here. And I really like, some of their players at Tennessee and the fact that they're not going to be as sloppy as Alabama was. They have this kid is the freshman here. His name is kind of going away from me. Nate Ament. He missed a few games. There's also some other guys on this team that missed a few games. Hell, Estrella missed a bunch of games all year long. And they're finally a complete team. And I was really impressed with the way that they played against Virginia here. And, Tennessee, now that they're healthy, their defense is very swarming themselves. They're kind of used to that. That's how Iowa State beat Kentucky, was just taking the ball from them, practically, right? Well, a situation I don't think they're going to quite be able to do quite as well against a Tennessee team that's going to fight very hard. Iowa State's been a little inconsistent as well. I do like Tennessee to cover. I'm not betting it yet. I think we're going to get a better number. I think the public's going to jump on Iowa State. I think a lot of people had Iowa State in their brackets because of Michigan's finish this year. Just like you said, Michigan got bored, right? And I 100% agree with that. So, and this is one of those, Marco, when I jumped in, I was like, I thought I was going to bet Iowa State. And then all that happened I did made my mind switch. It happens to us, man. So I'm going to wait it out.
The injured player theory is a big angle. There's no question about it. They win the first game without the player, and, they generally don't cover the second one. And it's even better when in the second one, the injured player's coming back. But like you said, how many minutes will he play? But it's that mental aspect of we won without you. Now we're going to have you, and the public's going to overreact and give us line value. And that's what it's all about. It's a combination of all of that.
Exactly. So let's wait on this one and see if we can get something a little bit better. Well, here we are. We just covered the 8 games of this Sweet 16. Marco, I got to ask now, who's your new Final Four?
Well, the revised Final Four, I already told you, I replaced the one with whoever wins the the Illinois-Houston game will be my new Final Four. So the fact that I'm calling Illinois, let's go ahead and go on the record and take Illinois. I think they find a way to win it. Then the 3 that I had getting there was Duke, was Purdue, and was Iowa State. So Iowa State, if they win by 1, that'd be happy. I could say I'm still live for my original final, 3 of my 4 Final Fours, but I covered the wager with Tennessee. I really do like Purdue. I think that Purdue right now is playing their best basketball, and they play a style that can frustrate other teams along the way. And that's, since Florida's not there to go against them in the championship game, I'm got to call Purdue now to win it all.
Purdue, can you show up, Fletcher Lawyer? Braden Smith hitting those threes. It is a guard's game. So it's hard to fight against that, but I'm going to stick with Arizona on the top of that one. I just think that they're the more complete team and have the better front court. They just got to play a little bit better defense against Purdue. They can't let Purdue shoot those threes like they let Utah State shoot those threes. I like St. John's on the other side just to be contrarian. It's probably going to be Duke, but if I was filling out a bracket, since everybody's taking Duke, I'm going to have to fill out St. John's. No real reason why, except I just hope that they hit some shots and they really do mess up Duke on the full press defense. And on the bottom, I'll take Illinois. I'll say Illinois is going to be there, and across from that, I'm going to take Michigan. So we'll stick with 2-1 seeds on the right, and then we'll go a little contrarian on the left, just for shits and giggles. Gun to the head, though. I'm taking Duke, of course. That was the case.
Gun to head. You don't want to be out on a limb, huh?
No,
you don't like playing Russian roulette there?
We're spread bettors here, Marco. We're spread bettors. That's why.
Yeah, I want to ask you one question. Moving into the second round, and you talked about the under in the one game you like a lot. I've always been a proponent, and people, they react to what they saw last, and we did see a lot of high-scoring games, in the second games last week. Now that we're moving to new venues, the first round games, the Thursday games and the Friday games, I like to tend to look to the unders again, because you got to get used to the sight lines. You're generally stepping up in class. You're not playing, a team that, the gap between seeds. You're not 1 in 16s and, 2 in 15s. The gap at worst is, 1 in 8, 1 in 8 or 1 in 9. So better play, better defense, lower scoring games. Maybe look to unders first halves in full game on the Thursday and Friday games. I really, really would have to have a strong reason to be betting an over. That's just my general take.
I 100% agree with that, especially in this round. Absolutely. You're going to see these teams fight hard, and it's going to come from the defensive side of the ball, because that's what you can control. You can't always control if your shots are really hot or not. That's just basketball. But you can control how much you're going to defend. And the refs are not, in general, do not want to make it about themselves in these games. They don't want to be part of the story. and they will call less fouls, in my opinion, too. If there was a prop for that, just like I did in the Super Bowl, I would always bet the number of fouls or penalties, whatever it would be, under the total. So 100% agree with you. Beer Bet Bangers, any plus money for any sport, Marco. And I know you just gave us the horse. You can use that if you want. I love it, too. I'll check out what Chief Wallaby's number is. But what's your Beer Bet Banger of the day?
Well, let's, I thought we had to go with the basketball. So, the Chief Wallaby, go ahead and get yourself a little of that on the Kentucky Derby futures market. And for the basketball one, my dog is, Illinois this week. And if you want to, run them to the Final Four, you're going to get them at plus money. You can make a little underdog, manual parlay, there with Illinois. Take them here, against Houston, and then take them again in the next one if you want to go to the Final Four. So Illinois is your beer money bet.
I love it, and I'll just go a little bit and parlay with that with Illinois with the St. John's first half money line at plus 172 to make it plus 600. I mean, it's beer bet, nothing sharp, obviously, nothing premium, but we're going to do that. I think that St. John's can get through the first half here. I'm just not so sure they can get through the whole game against Duke. I have a ton of NFL. Of course, we can do for Beer Bet Bangers, but we have a lot more this year to talk about that. So starting next week, I'm going to be starting my NFL and college football research myself. But Marco, you are the best, my man. Love your breakdowns here. Love it when you come back on our show. Thank you so much. Where could our listeners get your wonderful information in place?
Yeah, head over to wagertalk.com. You can check things out there. We've got a ton of free videos over there all the time. And, my favorite show, Bet On It, obviously. Be sure to check that out. But actually, Kiev, I have two favorite shows because I started a different show that's really had a lot of success last year when we first introduced it, and we brought it back this year. And it's growing like a cult following. I'm a situational guy, and I like the trap games and the sandwich games and everything. I've been doing a video called Marco's Deli, and we highlight those trap games and sandwich spots for people, and it's done very well. We went through the entire basketball season, free plays. I was doing it on Fridays, for the Saturday games. We had 60% in the deli for free for the year. So we covered the first two rounds on Bet On It. I'll be back on Friday evening looking at the Saturday games for everybody after the Thursday games are final, and I'll reassess what we got for Saturday. So check out Marco's Deli. You can find that on the Wager Talk TV YouTube channel.
I've watched some of that, and I've gotten some really good insights from that. Some stuff that I didn't have time. I'm serious. I don't have time to jump into stuff, and Marco does the work, and I'll look at these situations. I'm serious. I've watched some of that, and it is a great show. I love Marco's Deli, and I love eating deli sandwiches, too. It makes me think of Saginaw's over at Circa, my friend.
It's always food with me, Kev. You know that.
Make sure you guys check out Marco at Marco in Vegas at Wager Talk. All right, to recap our plays, we're going to go with UConn minus 130. We actually talked about that on Monday as well. It was at a little bit better of a number. And then we're going to go St. John's first half, actually, plus 3.5, because that's actually available, and I do like that one a lot. Illinois is not available enough for the 3.5, so I'm waiting. And the Michigan-Alabama under 174.5. Obviously, if you combine that with Purdue minus 6.5 and Nebraska at pick from the other show, then that's our plays for the Sweet 16. My friends, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. It really helps us in the algorithm. I hope you guys crush it this week in the NCAA tournament. Make sure you all stay safe. Remember to have some fun and go get some winners.